God now requires every temple recommend holding man and woman to carry a sidearm.
This just cuts through a problem that I had not understood for years.
We have these metrics that we use in society that we didn't create. Nobody's proud of this. It's just the way it works. Women are judged or measured largely by how they look. Men are judged and measured largely by how they provide, also protect.
It's tied to his identity, right? Whereas for women, often the job isn't tied to your identity, but how you present yourself to others is really tied to your identity, perhaps more than for men. Welcome to Sword of Laban. I'm here today with my friend Scott from the channel Nursery Leaders Unite. And go ahead and check out his channel. I'll leave a link in the description box below. I was watching one of his videos, and he had a great analogy about garments. And particularly, this is interesting now because for those who don't know, the church is releasing new garment designs. The short version of this is that the tops do not have sleeves and there's a slip for women. And there's been a lot of talk about this online for the last few months, and there has been some talk about it recently because, for example, Jasmine Rapley made a video about it because it's summertime and women are thinking about this. And for me, as a guy, can I be real? This talk is a little bit tiring. I personally don't really care very much, speaking as a guy, personally, but I thought I got why many women care or are excited or have a mix of feelings. But on the other hand, I don't really get it, because if I did, then I'd care as much as they do, right? So anyway, I was watching Nursery Leaders Unite's video, and he made a great analogy. So I wanted to bring him on, introduce him, and get him to share his analogy right here on this channel. So hi, Scott. How are you doing?
Good, doing well. Thanks for having me. Happy to share a little bit of something that's helped me and a few other people that I know. And if it doesn't help you, it's fine. It's not going to hurt my feelings, but this is kind of a difficult topic. And so if this works for you, great. I've also learned recently that that there's other areas where this can be helpful. For example, someone recently came to me and said, you know that garment thing you were talking about? It really helped me with the whole conversation with women in the priesthood. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of, and we talked about it and kind of threw it around. And so I'd like to introduce it really quick and then jump into the actual analogy. So my background on this topic is not professional. I have zero credentials. I grew up with 4 brothers. I had no sisters. And my mother was not very good at like explaining a bunch of girly stuff to me. So this is not my forte to start with. And secondly, I think it's important to say that this topic of the garment in general, the priesthood garment, is a sensitive topic, and I'm not here to like go through any kind of symbolism explanation, trying to explain the doctrine. This is just a cultural kind of a how-to, if you will. And also, I think it's fair to say that this topic in general is a very North American topic, the way we're going to talk about it. If you were to go to South America, Asia, Europe, like the conversation changes very quickly, and I'll kind of describe that probably towards the end. So I have a few notes that I'm going to go through. David, if you want to interrupt me at any point, feel free.
For sure. Go ahead.
So growing up, I learned very quickly that there was things I did not understand about what I call the girls' arena, like their world. And I didn't try super hard to figure it out. I figured, I could get away with kind of just ignoring it for a while. And then I got married and started paying more attention to a few things. And when I first got married, the topic exploded in Utah and elsewhere, kind of the LDS realm, of leggings. I don't know if it was just me, if I just picked up on it, or maybe it's been going on for a while, or maybe it was a thing. I don't know. But the leggings topic was just everywhere. And it was like, oh, well, obviously they're immodest and you shouldn't be wearing them. And other people were like, don't tell me what to wear. Nobody says they're immodest. It doesn't say immodest, or it doesn't say leggings in the handbook or whatever. It just says dress to your worthiness, whatever it says. And I was like, okay, this is crazy. I have no idea how to make sense of any of this, because I thought I knew what the answer was. And now I'm being told that I have no idea what I'm talking about. So in trying to figure this out, I sat down with my mom and I was hashing out, like really trying to solve the issue. And she said, hold on. I think this is where you're getting hung up. The answer is that men are not allowed to have an opinion about what women wear. And I don't know why. And I was like, that's it? So that's the answer. Like, there's no explanation. It's just a law, an unrefutable law that I have to obey with no explanation. She was like, yeah, if you just do that, things will make more sense to you. And I was like, okay, I don't think that's helpful. We'll see. And since then, just kind of taking that law for granted and applying it, I've seen that to be true, where men and women together in the same conversation have a very difficult time sorting this out. They disagree, and when they try to like explain, they just miss each other. You get only women in a conversation, they're fine. They can like sort it out and not agree and hash it, and and it can be a bloodbath and everybody's perfectly happy at the end. And if you get only guys, the same thing happens. They're like, yeah, women are crazy. Why are they doing this? And they like hash it all out. And then at the end, everybody's happy. Maybe they don't agree, but they understand each other. But you get men and women together and there's like zero understanding. So this is where the analogy comes in. Imagine that by way of commandment, or if you want to take a secular version, you could say by way of law, but for the purpose of this conversation, by way of commandment, the prophet comes out tomorrow morning and says, I've received a revelation, and it turns out that God now requires every temple recommend holding man and woman to carry a sidearm, a firearm of your choice. You have to carry it with you at all times, and it is a requirement. If you want to go to the temple, this is now part of the responsibility. Fair enough. There's really no explanation needed for this analogy anyway. So right after the announcement is made, what happens? The women grab their phone and they call that one girlfriend that they have that actually has a sidearm and maybe has a carry permit and stuff and knows what's going on with the guns. And they say, hey, girlfriend, what is the gun that you have? Where'd you get it? There's this new commandment. I want to follow the commandment, so I need a little bit of help. So they get a few tips and they go to the store and they purchase the gun, a few rounds, they get some training, they know how to operate it correctly, they load it up, they put it in their purse, and they never think about it again. They've now checked the box, they are keeping the commandment, and they're going to move on. And, it's a rule, but there's always exceptions to the rule. So some women are going to get really fascinated by it, and they're going to really like dig in and figure out what's going on with this whole thing. But most women are probably just going to fulfill the commandment, get a small, compact, pink gun, put it in their purse, and they're going to be happy with that. Okay. At the same time, the men are going to call their buddies, but then they're going to go to the shooting range, and then they're going to borrow people's guns, try a few out, maybe try dozens out, really think hard about cost, size, color, material, caliber, and then they're going to buy a firearm. And then pretty soon, after a few days, they're like, man, this firearm's really good for these situations. Man, it'd be nice if I had a different firearm for that other situation. Yeah, I'm going to need a second firearm for the other situation. So they ask around again, try out a few more, like, okay, this is the gun for that situation. Oh, but it would be nice if I had that same gun, but in a different color, it would really match my suit better on those days. So I need it in a different color too. And that first gun is a really slick gun, but in a different caliber, it might actually suit the needs better for a different situation. So pretty soon they've got 2 guns, 3 guns, 10 guns, 20 guns. And they have this kind of mini arsenal of the different ways they want to keep the commandment. Okay? So now you have in the closet the wife's gun, which is like hanging up next to her purse or whatever, and the husband's arsenal. And the wife says, honey, what is going on? You don't need all those guns. Why do you need all those guns? I only have one. It only takes one gun to keep the commandments. Like, why do you have to have all of this stuff? Doesn't make. And he says, no, 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 no. You don't get it. You don't get it because every gun has a purpose. Every gun has a function. Every gun has a situation that it is perfect for. And I have done so much homework to know which gun is correct for which situations, all this different stuff. And the woman will basically say, no, you're overthinking this. Like, just put the gun in your pocket. Keep the commandment. That's all you're asked to do. Why are you making it so complicated?
This is beautiful. This is seriously beautiful. And because I'm not a gun guy, just for reference, I've shot guns before. I don't particularly care for guns. I don't ever plan to have a gun. But this analogy speaks to me because it speaks to the male psyche, right? Even if you're not a gun guy, you can understand how men, if we receive this commandment, we would get together, we would talk about, we'd figure out all the different details about caliber and fit and match and how it interacts with our situations in life and how we can, optimize this situation for our lives. And whereas women wouldn't really talk about it, right? They're just one and done. That's just a beautiful analogy.
Yeah. And there's a reason why it works. And it's because in North America, we have these metrics that we use in society that we didn't create. These are not good metrics. And nobody's proud of this. It's just the way it works. Women are judged or measured largely by how they look. Men are judged and measured largely by how they provide, which is also protect. You provide a protection. And so if it comes to us talking about fashion, we're really talking about the underlying system of how women are measured, unfortunately. If we're talking about a man protecting, we're talking about his underlying ability to provide in his culture, in this North American culture.
Right.
I think that's why the analogy crosses the barrier and allows people to think about it differently, gives them permission to say, oh, I'll just let the women figure out the garment fashion thing because they're dealing with stuff that I'm not dealing with. And then women can say, oh, I'll let the men deal with the men's stuff if it's guns or whatever the thing is, because that they're dealing with stuff that I'm not dealing with. I mean, there's so many times when a man will lose his job and the woman is confused by how he's reacting, so sad or even angry, even violent. And she's like, it's going to be okay. Like, we'll get through this. And he's like, no, 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 no. I'm hopeless. And it's because it has attacked his core metric system in society.
Right. Really, it's tied to his identity, right? Whereas for women, often the job isn't tied to your identity, but how you present yourself to others is really tied to your identity, perhaps more than for men. And I love this because this just cuts through a problem that I had not understood for years. I kind of thought I understood because for women, apparel is important and looking nice is important. Therefore, garments are important. So there's going to be a lot of talk about it. But I still didn't quite get it. I watched this video with Jasmine Rapley and Mimi, forget her last name, where it was a great video, by the way. I'll link it below, but you can go watch it. But they spend 30 minutes giving acknowledgements about, the history, how this was for warm climates. This was intended for warm climates, but they'll acknowledge that I'm thankful that I can benefit too in my mild climate. And they'll give more further acknowledgements for feelings about different groups of women, how they might feel about this, and acknowledgement that some women will feel excited and some women will feel angry because what do you mean I've been hiding my shoulders for decades and now you're telling me it's okay to show my shoulders? And so they'll give all these kind of acknowledgements and caveats and really talk about the details about the fit and what this means for them and the sundress that they can wear now and how this will change maternity and things like that. And I'm just listening and my eyes are glazing over, honestly. No offense, because they're great content creators, but it just is not getting through to me. It kind of gets through that it's important to them, but it doesn't get through to that level of why it's that important to them. But when you flip it around like this and give your analogy, it really helped me understand a lot. So thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's helped me as well. There's a couple other things that I think are helpful and even funny on the last point that I'll make, if you don't mind.
Please.
But in the handbook, it refers to wearing the garment, except You always wear the garment, except, so there's an exception, when it must be removed for activities that cannot reasonably be done while wearing the garment. And it talks about this in the handbook. And this is where the women are sitting there trying to figure out what the word reasonable means.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the men don't get it. And then you put the gun analogy in it and you're like, okay, I can start to see it, because they would be like, well, it's unreasonable for you to have 20 guns. And we'd be like, yeah,
right.
Well, to you. So I was in Mexico, and where I was in Mexico, there was a lot of swimming, very hot, jungly, and I don't know exactly why, but in Mexico, there's no swimsuits. And so you just swim in whatever you're wearing. And if you're a member of the church who's endowed, you swim in your clothes, including your garments. Well, in North America, that's deemed unreasonable. No one ever swims in their garments in North America. It's somehow, somewhere, some way, we all agreed that it was unreasonable to swim in your garments. How do I know? Because none of us lose our temple recommend for taking off our garments and jumping in the pool. We all think that that's normal. Well, in other places in the world, swimming in your garments is completely normal. How do they swim in Europe? Do they swim in their garments? I would imagine they swim in their Speedos. That's what I always see, is their Speedos running around, jumping in the pool in their Speedos. So that's a whole other culture. And I think that little example gives you a little bit of a taste of how difficult the conversation is, even between women. They're trying to figure out what is reasonable. And as soon as you get a neighbor of a different culture and you invite them over for a swim party, you're right there with like, okay, maybe we don't all see things exactly the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is an example of one of these gray areas in the gospel. And you see a variety of responses to this, right? Some people are like, hey, gray area, great, I can do whatever I want. Yeah. Other people are like, hey, gray area, I'm going to stay the heck away from that. I'm not even going to go within 40 feet of that. And other people, I think this is more like me, is like, hey, gray area, cool, let me try to understand this and figure out exactly what this is about and why we have it. And then figure out with those others important in my life who it affects, like, for instance, spouse and kids, if it applies to them, what's best for us, right? While still following the commandment and showing your faith to Heavenly Father.
Yeah, and my suggestion to people is that they don't act in fear, but that they try different things and just see how they feel. If they're struggling with when and where to wear the garment, try it out. I've tried swimming in my garments, and I think it's very uncomfortable. And so I for myself deemed it unreasonable to swim in my garments, because in the summer I'm swimming every day, sometimes for hours in and out, just trying to keep cool. And so that's my decision. I when I was in Mexico, I walked up to this house where an older husband and wife lived, members of the church, and they were out in front doing yard work. And I didn't realize it for a minute, but the husband was doing yard work in his garment top with shorts on. And I didn't realize it because I never would have guessed it was the garment, because it was filthy. It was all muddy. Like he had smudges and dirt, and he was gardening. It's like, it's a messy situation. And when I realized it, I was like, oh my gosh, he's gardening in his garments and he's getting all dirty. And then I realized, this is the patriarch. This is the stake patriarch. This is not somebody who was endowed yesterday. This is somebody who's been around a long time. And he probably understands this stuff pretty well. And I remember when I've been endowed and I do work and I'm wearing shirt or top or whatever it is over my garment, and I still get my garments dirty. And I take, when I'm undressing, I'm like, oh my gosh, my garments are filthy. And I don't judge that. But for a moment, I was ready to judge the stake patriarch for his situation when he's trying to figure it out just like the rest of us. And some of us are going to be like, that's obscene. He should never do that. Excommunication right away. But I'm like, you got to give everybody a chance to figure it out. And some people may not figure it out.
And I think half of the test here is, we think that the test of commandments is, how do I follow them? But I think the other half of the test of life with respect to commandments is, how do I not judge others how others are following them, right? It's not up to me to decide how somebody else follows the commandments. And that is actually part of following the commandments, is not judging somebody else. And it's totally reasonable for one person to say, I'm going to dig in the dirt and get these garments dirty, and these are going to be my dirty garments, and I'm just going to put them on whenever I'm doing dirty work. That's totally reasonable, because it's unreasonable for me it's totally reasonable for me to wear my garments while I'm gardening. And then it's also fine for somebody else to say, you know what, I'm not going to get my garments dirty. I respect them too much. Both of these are reasonable approaches, and I think we have to just come to our own conclusion.
Yeah, I've heard so many different approaches. I've met people who only wear their garments in the temple. I've met people who wear their garments when they're with people in situations that you'd think were clearly not supposed to be wearing their garment. And in fact, this is my last little funny thing where this kind of comes together in an odd way. So just a few weeks ago, I was at a funeral, and no, I'm sorry. Was it a funeral? And he's 90 years old, and he's a member of the church. And so there's a whole bunch of members of the church there. The church it was a birthday party. It wasn't a funeral. I'm sorry. It was a birthday party. 90 years old. Everybody's there from the community, all members of the church, mostly members of the church. And I'm there early, and I'm standing at the door, kind of helping bring stuff in. And an old friend of mine walks in, and he's like 80 years old. I don't know, 85. And he's retired police officer, and great guy, great member of the church. And as he's walking in, he doesn't have his button-up shirt buttoned, and you can see he's wearing his garment top below. And in my mind, he just forgot to button his shirt. And so I'm like, hey, how's it going? Let me help you button your shirt. And he's like, no, don't button my shirt. And I was like, really? You don't want to button your shirt? And he's like, no, I can't. I don't like buttoning my shirt because if I keep it open, it covers up my gun. And I was like, what? You came to a 90-year-old birthday party at the church, by the way. This is at the chapel. And he carries his gun everywhere. I knew that. I just didn't think it was going to be at this particular situation. And he decided that it was more important to keep his shirt unbuttoned and his garments showing so he could cover his sidearm better. The entire time. He was there for 2 hours with all these members around. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was so funny. And
that is funny. So you mean like his shirt was too tight, so he had to unbutton it so that his gun would have, space to... Is that what you're saying?
I never saw his shirt buttoned, so I don't know exactly what the problem would have been. But somehow his shirt being unbuttoned covered his sidearm better. And which, if you're a concealed carry person, that's a big thing. Like, you want to keep your gun covered. You don't want it to accidentally show or whatever. Anyway, I thought it was the funniest coincidence of how these two analogies come together in a really unintentional way. The garment sidearm analogy is just like...
Yeah, that is a real crossover.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thanks, Scott. I really enjoyed talking with you tonight and for all your thoughts there.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Yeah, comment below if you're watching this. What do you think about the analogy? Does this make more sense to you now? Are you able to kind of get inside the head of women and understand? And if we are a woman, please comment below to help us guys understand better. So I think we'll end there. Thanks, Scott. This is Sword of Laban. Out.